showcasing gardens and nature in the valley and beyond. This is Let's Grow There, a WKBN Plus exclusive. Let's dig in. Hello and welcome back to Let's Grow There. I'm your host, Laurel Stone, and today I'm joined by guest Lee Beers of the Trumbull County OSU Extension. Lee, go ahead and tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do at the Extension.
Thanks, Laurel. My name is Lee Beers. As you said, I am the Ag and Natural Resources Assistant Professor in Trumbull County. I work with pretty much anything that is green and grows.
Absolutely. Now, another thing you work with are the creepy crawlies, right?
Yes.
And that is what we are here to talk about today. So we all know certain bugs are good, but as a gardener, other ones can really be the bane of your existence. So talk about some of the most common problems that you get when people come in and say, I have a problem with this pest. What do you see?
So a lot of times I see problems where it's kind of self-inflicted, planting things too close together, maybe choosing some varieties that are maybe not the most hardy or resistant for either our insects or our diseases. So sometimes doing a little bit of research up front can save a lot of problems down the road.
What type of research would you suggest?
One, investigating the varieties that you're going to choose, whether it's going to be an ornamental plant or a vegetable plant, making sure that it is well suited for our environment. And if you're not sure, you can always call the extension office because if you can choose some resistant varieties, you would have less problems to deal with down the line. So genetic resistance, whether it's for insects or diseases, it's already built in. It doesn't matter if you're there to plug the bugs off or to apply any sort of chemical. It's already built in, and it can save you a lot of time and hassle.
What are some examples of plants that are good for this?
So particularly if you like zucchini, cucumbers, or pumpkins, usually in August we start to get a disease called powdery mildew. You can see it. It's a white powder that develops on the plants. There's a wide range of resistance available in those plants. So the difference between a resistant variety and a susceptible variety can be I'm going to harvest zucchini from July until September versus I'm going to harvest for about 3 to 4 weeks before it succumbs to powdery mildew.
Now, for those of us who already have our gardens in and may not know about the resistant varieties, are we preemptively doing things to prevent this? Because I always get powdery mildew. It always kills my pumpkins.
Yeah, powdery mildew is always going to be in the environment. Sometimes you can do everything right and still get disease. So remember that just because you get disease doesn't mean you're a bad gardener. One, if you can remove excess moisture. So if you can either create drainage channels or raise beds, anything you can do to prevent just standing water. This spring has been incredibly challenging and then it went dry, but anything you can do to remove moisture. And that also includes spacing your plants out appropriately. If you try to crowd them too close together, anytime there's leaves touching together, that creates a wet, damp environment, and that's where fungi thrive. Most of our plant diseases are going to be in that fungi.
So with the symptoms, give us a few treatment methods, both chemical and natural.
So depending on the disease, if you see any sort of diseased tissue, you can cut those out. Make sure you are cutting back to healthy tissue and take the diseased material and put it in the garbage. Do not compost it. You want to remove it off your property. So put it in the garbage, get rid of it. And sometimes if you are known that you're going to have powdery mildew every single year, choosing resistant varieties can be your first line of defense. Using integrated pest management or IPM practices, that's at plant spacing, removing water, cultural practices like that, is going to be your next line of defense. Finally, your last line of defense are going to be chemicals. So there's a wide variety of chemicals out there. Fungicides are preventative. You cannot put a fungicide on an already diseased plant and cure it. They are protective and preventative only.
How early do you want to start? Like for me right now, my cucumbers, all my things that get the disease, the powdery mildew like that, they're all pretty small. So do I start it when they're babies like this?
Scouting is going to be very important, and also understanding the disease cycle. So powdery mildew does not typically appear in our area around mid to late July, definitely into August. So I would not be too worried about powdery mildew right now. So scouting at the very first sign of powdery mildew, you can put down a fungicide. You will not cure the powdery mildew that's already there, but you can significantly slow or stop the spread of the disease.
What other diseases do people battle with?
There's a lot of diseases in tomatoes. Septoria leaf spot, early blight, late blight, blossom end rot, which is not technically a disease, but those are our most common ones that we see in the area.
So tell me about some preventative measures. Right now, I have a ton of tomatoes. They're growing everywhere. I want a successful harvest because I've decided that this is the year I'm going to learn how to can.
Okay.
So we need to have success. So tell me what to do right now to ensure that I have that.
So first off, this time of year, we're not really into peak disease season. So now is setting your plants up for success to be healthy during that peak disease season, which is going to be mid to late July through the harvest pretty much. So making sure that you have fertile soil, the plants are healthy, they're not stressed, they're not underwatered or overwatered. The healthier the plants are, the more likely they are to resist disease and come out the other side with a bountiful harvest.
With tomatoes, there's something I've heard before that as they grow, I'm one of the people, I trim the lower branches off, I prune the suckers. But something my mother always taught me was that you should not drop discarded branches at the bottom. Something about it splashing back up and harming the plant.
Yeah, so anytime you prune anything in your vegetable garden, especially if it's diseased, you're better to take it and remove it. Because if there is any disease, just because it is no longer attached to the plant, that disease can still develop. And as those spores from the fungi develop, they'll also cause more inoculation for disease in other parts of your garden.
What about mulching, under or around the plant, whether it be leaves, traditional mulch, grass cuttings, things like that?
So mulch is double-edged sword. So they can be helpful in some scenarios and they can be detrimental in other areas. If we are in a drought, mulch can hold on to moisture for a long period of time and help fuel that growth in the absence of moisture. But as I already mentioned, excess moisture can promote disease. Mulch can also cover up those fungi in the soil, prevent that splashing up as easily, but it can also rob your nutrients. So you have to be very careful with mulching. Find a system that works for you, and if you're not sure about the different systems, I'd be happy to chat with anybody at the extension office.
If you don't, is it different with going out and buying store-bought mulch, like the wood chips, whereas say if you cut your grass and you bag grass and put it around there, or if you have leaves left over for fall and you put leaves under there, does it all work pretty much the same way?
Not necessarily. So when you are getting a wood compost or wood mulch, there's a lot of carbon source in that, and as that breaks down, it's not going to release a lot of heat. Where if you use grass clippings, as it breaks down, it will actually heat up to 120 to 130 degrees. In big piles, they can be 160 degrees. That is not good to have around our young vegetable plants. But generally speaking, if you can avoid grass clippings, anything that is on the woodier side will not heat up nearly as bad as anything that is green.
Now, I'm going to switch to something that I consider vaguely disease adjacent. What about sunspots, sunburn on plants?
Yeah, so we saw a lot of that in these last few days. When we get very high temperatures, and especially in scenarios where we don't have a lot of leaf material to provide that shading, that skin or the surface of that fruit or vegetable can dry out, and it can cause some significant bleaching of that tissue, which can cause something that doesn't look appetizing. So adequate watering, because if you do not have sufficient water to have that fruit to be flexible and pliable, you're more prone to have sun scald or heat injury from that. In very severe cases, you may need to put up some sort of screening or a shade material to help protect those fruit. And that also goes for apples, but putting up a shade for an apple tree is a little bit more difficult than for some tomatoes.
Absolutely. Now, while we're on the topic of sun scald, one of the things I was always taught was not to water in the heat of the afternoon right when the sun's shining, to water in the morning, preferably, or the evening, though there's also problems with the evening with moisture sticking around. So tell us about watering times with preventing diseases.
So watering in the morning is preferable. That is, watering at any point of the day is better than no watering at all. So if that's the only time of day that you're able to water, definitely go out there. Try not to splash up any water. So a slow trickle is better than going out there and a full blast on a garden hose and splashing that water all over. If you're able to do it in the morning, that's still preferable because as the day warms up, photosynthesis will actually shut down. And that's when plants need water the least. But before it gets too warm, that's when they need a lot of water. So if you can get adequate moisture into the soil early in the morning or even later in the evening, the plants can make more efficient use of that water.
What about the practice of like aqua globes or things like that? Are they helpful or is it better to hand water?
So aqua globes, they may work, but on a large garden, they can be expensive and they may not provide enough water. If you're able to go out and if you can feel moisture in that soil, you probably don't need to water. I see a lot of folks overwater, and overwatering will actually create an oxygen depleted environment and the plants will actually drown. Those roots need oxygen. So just like we had a very wet spring, and you may have noticed that some of your plants were stunted, it's probably from not enough oxygen in that root zone because there's too much water filling up that pore space in the soil.
Is there things we can do to add oxygen back in, like if it's super rainy?
Aeration. So if you have like a garden fork and you stay away from the roots too far, don't dig up your plant. But if you're able to just gently loosen the soil around that plant with a garden fork, just stabbing it into the soil, you'll provide a little bit of oxygenation in that root zone.
That's really neat. Thank you. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to get a little bit deeper into the topic of bugs. We'll see you then. Hello, and we are back. I am joined with Lee Beers from the OSU Extension in Trumbull County. We just finished talking a little bit about some of the diseases your plants can have. Now we're going to talk about another pest, bugs. So we talked about tomato diseases, but now we're going to talk about another plague, which is the tomato hornworm. So I'm going to let you take that away.
Yep. So tomato hornworm, they are scarier than they're actually destructive. They're big, they're green, but as long as you're out scouting in your garden, sometimes if you can get over the EU factor, if you can pick those off, and again, put those into a cup of soapy water, or if you have chickens love hornworms, but usually picking those off and discarding them physically is the best management practice for a small garden.
How often should people go out and really do a thorough look for these in your plants?
Every day, but I know that's not realistic for some instances. So try to be out there as frequently as you can. And when you're looking for bugs, just like you don't want to be out in the sun on a hot day, neither do bugs. So they typically congregate below the leaves. So they're going to be on the bottom of the leaf surface. So you need to go out and start flipping over leaves to look for egg sacs or insects that are hiding. And go all the way down to the base of the plant. So something like a squash vine borer, you will see at the bottom of the plant versus just underneath the leaves.
Once an infestation has started, how do you stop it? How do you help it?
So stopping it, it depends on how bad the infestation is. You can spend a lot of money to save very few dollars on tomatoes. Sometimes it is better economically to not do anything at all. But I know when we're talking about a home garden, everybody wants to have the best fruit. So sometimes the economic equation goes out the window. So if it is severe, and it's like hornworms, if you have a lot of hornworms, again, spending 20, 30 minutes out in the garden and physically picking those off is going to be more effective than any insecticide. But if you have aphids or something like that, those are too numerous to pick off. You may want to consider using an insecticide, but again, that insecticide has to be labeled for the crop that you're trying to protect. And you want to follow all the rates and the instructions on that insecticide label. Products like Sevin or some other insecticides are contact only. They don't really provide too much residual control. So make sure that you're covering those plant leaves, top and bottom, and the stem thoroughly.
What about soapy water spray for aphids?
Soapy water spray can be effective, but the challenge is finding a recipe or a pre-made formula that is reliable and consistent. One of our challenges in Extension is trying to limit the use of destructive insecticidal soaps because the soap that you choose can be more harmful to the plant than the insects that are actually feeding on it. So if you're looking to make your own insecticidal soap, please use university and extension resources. You can find recipes available that are going to be safer for your plants because plants have a waxy cuticle on them. And if you use too harsh of a detergent or a soap, you can remove that protective layer and you can actually cause phytotoxicity to the plant. There'll be browning. And again, instead of having a few bad spots on your plant, you can kill the whole thing. So choosing a good insecticidal soap recipe is very, very important.
Now, another bug that plagues us every summer is the Japanese beetle. We've seen different methods for this. The beetle trap, which is really highly debated of if it brings the beetles to your yard, but if they're already in your yard.
Yes. So my recommendation is to put the beetle trap or the pheromone trap on your property line, preferably away from your garden, because they do attract Japanese beetles. And if you put it right in your garden where you have a high infestation, you're going to attract more Japanese beetles. And if you have an overflowing Japanese beetle trap and they can't get in there, they may crawl back out and cause more damage. Depending on the crop or the plant that they're eating on, sometimes it's a whole lot easier to go out with that cup of soapy water, pick them off, and then put them into the jar because Japanese beetles fly around so frequently. Having an insecticide that is going to be there and applied at the time of the Japanese beetle feeding can be incredibly difficult. So again, sometimes depending on the plant, it may be easier to physically pull those off and kill those.
What are some other common plants? So we've covered a lot of what I have. I primarily do cucumbers, tomatoes. Another one I have is beans. That one I have issues with bugs more than disease, though.
Yeah, we were looking at our green beans this morning, and the slugs are out there attacking them. So when it comes to the green beans, bean beetles and slugs are going to be some of our bigger challenges with those. When it comes to slugs, you get a little bit of an ew factor. There are several home remedies that can be effective as long as you keep up with it. If you get a wet, damp newspaper folded up and you put it in your garden, slugs will be attracted to that as the day starts to get warmer. So they will go under there. Now you have to go out and you will have all the slugs in one location. You can either squash them, put salt on them, but you can get rid of them that way. You can also bury a cup of beer. I would not use your good beer for this. At the soil level surface, they are attracted to beer and they will go in. But again, you still have to discard of those dead slugs. So there are different methods you can use for that.
Give me a little bit more detail into the beer trap because that's something that's very intriguing.
Yeah, so for the beer trap for slugs, if you take a cup of beer and then you bury it so that the top of the cup is flush with the soil line, so that way the slugs can crawl in without having to climb up anything. They'll go in, consume the beer, and then most likely drown in that beer. So you'd have to pull that cup out or refill it and remove the dead slugs every day. In a heavy infestation, you may be doing that every single day. Other times you may just be topping off the beer. Again, use cheap beer. I wouldn't use the good stuff.
I'm moving away from bugs for a minute because I've planted corn the last 3 years and I have never had so much as a start because chipmunks or some other little critters dig it up and they eat it. So talk to us a little bit about how you can prevent small critters from getting into your garden.
Yeah, small critters are very difficult. Larger critters like deer are a little bit easier. The only thing that really works is a physical barrier. So if you have chipmunks eating up your sweet corn, or if you have crows pulling up the seeds before they germinate or even after they germinate, putting up some sort of bird netting and burying that so that way the chipmunks can't go underneath of it, that is by far going to be the only thing that works. There's a lot of products out there that are advertised as animal repellents. Some are hit or miss, but most of them are mostly ineffective. They would have to be applied every day, and if it rains, they lose their effectiveness. I see a lot of folks try the decoys, putting an owl up or a fake coyote, but if you leave it in the same spot for 4 years, no, you're not fooling anybody. Animals get used to that, and they know that it's not fake.
Now, there's another hack that I've seen. This is kind of a twofold one. So the first part is using animal fur around your plants so the smell kind of repels them, and the other one is human hair. Like if you brush your hair to clean out your hairbrush and put it around. I did it a couple years ago for my peppers because they were getting chewed up. Whether coincidence or not, after I put my hair like around the base, I did stop getting things chewed.
Yeah, so that's another one that probably is not going to be super reliable over time, especially if you're in a suburban environment. Our smells are everywhere. So adding one more pile of hair on top of all of the other smells that are coming from our households is probably not going to be super effective. Adding animal fur, I've seen some folks that after they groom their dog, spread that around. It's the same thing. Your dog is going to be using your yard to pee in, probably in your garden as well. Those scents are around. They're probably not going to be super effective.
Well, it was worth a shot at least.
If it works, it works. But
So why are there products marketed toward this if they don't necessarily work?
That's a great question, and I wish I had an answer, but it's mostly because people continue to buy them. And some of the claims are half truth or not entirely true. And if you have deer that are eating all of your ornamental plants and you want to try and stop them, you would likely try anything just to save your plants because plants are very expensive.
What are some other hacks that people might not know?
And unfortunately, in the world of social media, a lot of these hacks are on TikTok and YouTube, Facebook. They don't work. It's a hack that may look good on a video, but in reality, it just does not work for either our climate or they just don't work at all. So be very leery of hacks.
We have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back to talk a little bit more about how you can protect your garden. We'll see you then. And we are back. I'm Laurel Stone, joined with Lee Beers from the OSU Trumbull County Extension, and we are talking about how to protect your garden from pests and disease. Let's dive right back in. Now, when you go and buy the ones that are more resistant to disease, things like that, if you go to any of your local garden centers, are most of them resistant? Do you have to ask an employee and specifically say, I want resistant, or is it something that you have to buy and start from seed yourself?
It really depends on where you're purchasing them. I always encourage you to talk with the garden center employees. They know more about the plant than what's on that label. If you're starting your plants from seed, a lot of the online seed catalogs are excellent resources. They'll tell you their ratings, whether or not they're resistant or not. But if you're going to, just a general store and you're just picking up, a celebrity or a big boy tomato start, they may not give you the disease rating on those. So if you have the opportunity, definitely talk with somebody who's an employee to see if they have more information than what's on the label.
Now, another thing with bugs, they're annoying enough in the garden, but when they come inside, that's when we really go to war. So I'm big into fresh fruit in the summer, right? Like I love all of our local peaches. I put them on my counter so they can soften. And in a day, there's gnats, and then they just turn to mush. So what are we doing about the bugs when they decide to come in?
When the bugs get inside, it can be incredibly challenging to get them out, especially fruit flies. So the best thing to do, unfortunately, in the summer, you want to leave the windows open to get some of that fresh air. But those windows, even with screens, are allowing quite a few of our bugs in. And our houses, despite our best efforts, they're always going to be a nook and cranny where insects can come in, whether it's a stink bug, a fruit fly, or even bed bugs, if you want to go down that road. So there's a lot of things you can do. One, keep the windows closed. If you have any fruit that is starting to get overripe, either put it into the refrigerator or the freezer. And then as soon as you consume that fruit, sometimes if you have a compost bucket on the counter, take that outside immediately and allow them to find that fruit outside versus having them come inside. And if you do have an infestation inside and you want to use an insecticide, please read the label thoroughly. Many products are not labeled to be used indoors safely.
What about preventative, like ants? Everyone gets ants in the spring and in the summer. What can we do? Is there, there's hacks saying like if you have mint, put mint, like rub mint on the windowsill or essential oil or smells to repel them. Is there, truth in those natural hacks?
There's a little bit of truth in those, but sometimes they are very unreliable depending on the species. So mint may work for one species, but not another. If you're looking for ways to prevent those insects from coming inside, removing any sort of mulch around the base of your windows and around your house, pulling that away because they find that to be a nice, suitable home. They can burrow easily. They're protected. So removing mulch away from the house. And there are baits out there for ants, pretty much a borax-based bait where they'll eat those and take those back. Those are very effective. And again, but if you use all of your integrated pest management strategies, your last option is going to be insecticide. There are some sprays that are considered to be barriers. You can apply it to the perimeter of your house, and it should prevent ants or other insects from trying to get into your house by crawling up your walls.
Now, there's a million creepy crawlies out there. I feel like it's every day. I go out in my garden and I see a new bug, and it always prompts the question of, is this a good bug or a bad bug? Do I keep it or do I kill it? How do people know? Are there apps? Does the OSU Extension have a guide for this?
Yeah, we have resources in our office that we can identify just about every bug in the United States. There are apps available that you can put on your phone that use artificial intelligence. I'm a fan of a app called Seek, Seek. It'll take a picture of bugs, plants, and they'll help identify them. They're not entirely reliable, just like every other artificial intelligence tool out there, but it'll get you about 90 to 95% of the way there. And if you have any questions, if you have pictures, you can email them or call our office and drop off samples. We're always happy to identify them.
In general, are most bugs harmful or helpful? If you don't know.
Most of them are going to be neutral. They may cause some damage, but most of them, you will never even notice them. So understanding the difference between good and bad insects is very important. So if we're talking about aphids, you need to understand what lady beetles look like through their entire life stage. Lady beetle larvae look very different than adult lady beetles. Some people may look at those and consider it to be a bad bug and kill it, but the larvae are actually more voracious eaters than the adults. And a lady beetle larva will actually consume more aphids than an adult beetle. So understanding our common good beneficial insects is very important. Some beneficials, like our praying mantis, are indiscriminate. They'll eat lady beetles along with the bad ones. So understanding the good and the bad is very important. And that's where if you use a broad spectrum insecticide, you're killing all of them. You're killing your good and the bad. So identifying the problem correctly can help protect the good and remove the bad.
What are some other problems that people bring to you to the extension that we haven't talked about yet?
Oh, we could fill days and days on that. When it comes to gardening, whether it's fruit or house plants or anything like that, again, it really varies depending on the time of year. One thing I see a lot of folks struggle with is going to be grapes. Everybody loves to have Concord grapes, but then they all ask why they get these raisin-looking things at the end of the season. And by that point, the disease cycle for that has already gone away. Also looking for invasive pests like spotted lanternfly, brown marmot stink bug. We get so many questions through our office that we try to help every single person. Doesn't matter what the question is.
So what are your final parting comments that we can use as gardeners to take care of our crops and our babies?
Yes, so you put a lot of time and energy and money into your garden. I encourage everybody to use university resources. They've been tested with science and research. They're backed up with good data. It's not the social media hacks. So again, finding reliable sources is very important. Call your extension office. There's an extension office in every county in Ohio. We're ready and willing to help if you have any questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That wraps up this week's segment of Let's Grow There, and we'll see you next time.